Welcome to the Breathe Belief podcast show where I am your host, Bree. And today we're going to talk about anxiety. The word anxiety, right? Like how many of you feel anxious or have had anxiety and know very well what that feels like, right? So I had the inspiration the other day and I was thinking, why is it that so many people live their lives every day in angst? Like, what is it about our everyday living that causes us to be in such high stress, right? So our lifestyles are either supporting the cortisol and the stress hormone, or we're taking active control and looking for resources to maybe maintain that a little bit better. So this might be triggering to the person who thinks that their anxiety is happening to them in a way that they just can't control it. So I can speak to this topic because I find myself in anxiety or in anxious thoughts, and I can tell you from experience that my definition of anxiety has changed over the course of a couple of years. So I've never had to take medication for any of those things. So to those that are on medication for anxiety, I am empowering you and just really recognizing and congratulating you for doing something about it. But I love the holistic approach. That's just my own personal flavor, is to attack the problem at its root instead of going at the branch, right? And what I mean by that is your anxiety doesn't have to control you, but it does take a conscious effort to try to maintain it, if not dispel it. Like, it's going to surface, it's going to happen, and that's okay. I think our society and our culture actually really appreciates when we're so busy and so in a chaotic state that we just wake up and run to work and go do the things and take care of the kids and that, right? That we don't just pause. We don't just breathe and just focus on the right now, the state of moment that we're in currently. So one of my amazing mentors brought me to the understanding that our senses have everything to do with anxiety. Because if you're in the present moment, anxiety cannot exist because you're embodied. So embodied is a really, really big word. And I have promised a podcast on that multiple times, so I need to get to that. But when you are aware of the things that you are feeling, and I mean actually with your hands, whether you're aware of what texture you're feeling or what your surface feels like, or whether you can get in a state of the present moment by smell, right? Like our senses are not just touch, it's smell and all of the other five senses. So if you can get into the present state, the present moment, it is impossible to have anxiety in that moment. Now that takes a lot of control. It takes a lot of self-discipline is a better way to say that, because you have to, in the moment, choose not to feed the addiction to your overthinking. Now, there is something you're getting out of the overthinking. Now, when I say you, I'm talking about the part of your brain that has a highway or a loop going on that gets something from a constant state of worry. So really nothing's wrong with you. You're not actually broken. So if that triggers you, I'm sorry, but I'm going to cut through the crap that says you're broken and you'll always be a victim to your anxiety, because that's not true. So it's a choice. So to have compassion for yourself and understand that your brain is in a state of worry, it's in a state of asking the wrong questions. So here's my new definition of anxiety. It is a habit of asking the wrong questions, okay? Anxiety starts when you ask questions like, I don't have kids, but I have a mother who worries a lot about her kids. So if you're a mama, you could probably relate. What happens if my son doesn't come home tonight? What happens if that person gets in a car accident? What happens if I lose my job and I can't pay my bills? What happens if I can't, make this relationship work? What happens if I'm alone again? And what if he cheats? Or, what if she betrays me? And what if this friend isn't really honest? And what if? So anxiety is your addiction to asking the wrong questions. And if you can let that sit for just a minute, then we would have to challenge the opposite definition and tell me is it possible to have anxiety when you're asking a different set of questions that aren't worry, but they're impossibility? So the questions then could be, what if I get the raise I've always dreamed about? What if my dreams really can happen? What if he falls in love with me and asks me to marry him? What if I get to move to that dream state? What if I get the scholarship? What if I get to play that sport I've, been wanting to play? It's so crazy because instantly there's been an energy shift, right? So if you've had anxiety and you've had a loop in your head, in your mind of worry, and in a state of asking all the wrong questions, you can disrupt that by your 5 senses. Tune into the present moment. So that means having enough awareness that your brain is freaking out. Okay, we're going to breathe in that moment. Breathe, right? We've got to tell the body we're not going to die, because your body will follow the mind. And so what you're really trying to do isn't necessarily just to go and attack the mind, because I know that it's easier to listen to a podcast that says, yeah, just control the set of questions you're asking. But in the moment, you're not going to be able to fight your brain, because the brain is what is causing the issue or is in the loop, right? So we've got to get the body under control so that the mind has a shot, right? So that would require breath. That would require breathing. That would require conscious response to your senses. And not only that, but it would then require, okay, I have an awareness that my mind is freaking out about something, and it probably could happen, but I'm not going to choose to worry about it because it's outside of my control, right? Easier said than done. I get it. But if you can start to disrupt the pattern through your senses and get into the present moment, then you have a shot of awareness. Here's what's really cool. You can disrupt any pattern loop in your brain, including anxiety, just through sound, right? So if you're in a constant state of fear and you're driving down the highway and you have this overwhelming gut-wrenching feeling like something is seriously wrong, and you're driving down this highway, right? Snap out of it, right? Sound will disrupt that faster than anything else you could possibly think in the moment. And I know it sounds really crazy. You're going to have resistance with sound at first because your brain, again, is on this loop or this pattern, this highway of going down the same road that you've trained it to. So when I say you're not a victim, I mean, quite actually, you're not broken. You have trained your brain to worry about worst case scenario. And I want to tell you why you're not broken and why that's not your fault. Your ego or your mind hasn't been upgraded. So back in the day, and I've mentioned this before, I'll say it in probably every freaking podcast because it's that important. We were wired for our evolution to survive, right? So back in the day when we were trying to avoid bears and living in the wilderness and didn't have cell phones and computers and technology and buildings and restaurants and banks, whatever, it made sense that we were constantly in fight or flight, oh my gosh, and look over your shoulder, and that makes sense, right, back then. But it's 2022 and you've done no upgrading to your brain, to your computer system. So it's still freaking out, right? It's don't trust nobody, keep your guards up, high level, high cortisol, everything's a threat to you. And when everything's a threat to you, then of course you're going to worry. And when you're constantly addicted to that emotion, the body will respond as if what you are imagining is real. So anxiety could just be another way of a misuse of the imagination. So here's my third recommendation to disrupt that pattern in that cycle, which is meditation. And it's so simple that most people won't do it. And I'm not saying you need to go be a yogi. I'm not saying go hug trees. I'm not saying any of that, because that word alone, I feel like it has different reps. It's got its own background depending on where you were raised and all the things. And meditation isn't woo-woo. That's just like saying, hey, I really know that could help me. I'm just too lazy to do it. Really. That's the judgment to that, because meditation is nothing more than the ability to calm down your mind and intentionally breathe, right? So how many of you, out of curiosity, how many of you will go throughout the day and constantly yawn? If you're yawning, it's actually a sign that you need more oxygen in your body. Your breath isn't getting down all the way into your diaphragm. You're not taking those big, deep belly breaths. You can go do the research on that on your own time. But even 5 minutes a day is long enough to start a new pattern, a new loop, a new cycle in the brain to upgrade the evolution of our mind to help it recognize. Back then, it made sense to be in fight or flight or to be in survival mode because that's how we had to get here today. But now that no longer serves me and I don't want to live in fear anymore. I am choosing consciously to not be in a state of fear. And conscious just means, okay, I didn't know that my anxiety was in my control. I didn't know why my hands would get sweaty and then I would get anxious and then I'd freak out and then I would leave my body and disconnect. I didn't know why. But now that I'm aware of my habit of just leaving or being disconnected from the present moment and not being in my body, embodied, right? Now that I'm aware of that, consciousness is just the ability to say out loud, I want to choose different. Right? Like you can't imagine, I can't say this enough. If you will just choose or say out loud that you desire different, you're already in the creation and process of change. It won't happen overnight. But I have met too many women, too many people who are on anxiety and depression pills, and you're not wrong. You're not broken. I'll say that again. It's not your fault. And I think you're badass for looking for a solution because not everyone does something for it. And you get to have even more control and you get to sit with that part of the brain that wants to feed off of negativity and worry. And you get to consciously insert a new question in the middle of a freaking anxiety panic attack that's not serving you, right? First, I'm going to come back to breath. Then I'm going to come back to my senses. What do I smell right now? What do I see right now? What do I hear right now? And if that doesn't work, then just disrupt the freaking system by making a loud noise like, ha! Right? Like that actually will catch you off guard because it's like, wait a minute, stop. Right? There's like two sides of you. The brain who's like feeding off of this constant fear and the conscious part of you that's like, wait, I actually don't need to freak out right now. Like there's actually not a bear in my facility. And from what I understand, the things I'm asking don't make sense and they're not in my control. So let me ask a different question. How good do I want to feel? How good am I willing to feel? How amazing will it be when my brain is no longer addicted to stress? And how good will it feel when I'm no longer worried about shit that doesn't matter? Like, how empowering will it be to take control of my mind again and ask the questions that matter, right? So I'm also reminding you that if you've never done meditation before, that's okay. You can take big, deep belly breaths and go look online. Like YouTube has so many free meditations. Just pick one. But I can promise that if you will start to do something in the middle of the questions that arise, your brain will resist at first, which is my last thought. Just because there's resistance doesn't mean that it's not working, okay? There have been people that have been able to get rid of their anxiety in weeks. And there's other people that it takes years, and that's okay. We're all on a different journey, but you just have to decide that you're no longer for it and that you're going to be someone who's empowered and someone that chooses no longer to serve it. Now, the resistance comes when your brain's like, what the hell? We've always worried our whole lives. We've always been negative. Now you want to change the script? Now you want to live a different way? Now you want to be different? Right? That resistance is a good sign because sometimes we're battling with what we've always known and what's familiar. So you might say consciously that you don't like your anxiety and you wish it would just go away. But there's also another part of you, the body, which is addicted to what you've been doing. And that part of you is like, we're not going to change. At least we know what anxiety feels like. We know what it's like when we're freaking out and we're, disconnected and we're not embodied. Like that's familiar. But to have a quiet mind or to have an excited one that's not full of fear, like That's different, right? Like that's weird. So I want you to know that your thoughts are so empowering when you start to write down, okay, today I had really shitty thoughts. Today I was thinking, what if this happens? And what if this happens? And maybe it's not even a question, right? Maybe it's just a statement, and that alone causes anxiety. Like, I'm going to die. Do you think that if you thought I'm going to die over and over and over and over and over and over again, that your body would start to get sweaty and your breath would get heavy and you might get like these headaches? It would make sense to me that you're experiencing a form of anxiety because of the words that you are populating in your brain that has created enough of a pattern that your body is responding to where your mind is directing it. Like, I know when I'm stressed out and in really high cortisol levels and feeling anxious, it's because I'm telling myself something that isn't true. And I'm believing a lie in that moment, right? Like, what if they reject me? And what if they don't like me? And what if? And then there's pressure because I'm running out of time. And we all have stories of some sort. Stories are just different words and different sentences and different beliefs that we're choosing to filter through our consciousness. So you do have the ability to rise above that. And I'm so compassionate for everyone that experiences this. If you're not on medication, that's okay. A lot of the population is actually still in high stress, right? Like, we're actually, especially in Western society, programmed to believe that, well, everybody's stressed out. Like, that's normal. And if you're not, it's because you're not doing enough, right? Like, have you heard that? Like, you're not producing enough. You're not working enough. That's why you're not stressed out. So yeah, go figure out how to be more stressed. Like, it's such a cultural belief and a programming to feel normal if you're stressed out. And it's actually not. You don't have to buy into that bull crap, because what your brain really, really, really gets a kick out of is dopamine, which is awesome love hormones like serotonin. And you can't get those things when you're constantly flooding your nervous system with stress and cortisol, because that's like saying, okay, I really desire to be happy, but not really. Like, I really desire to be happy, but not really, right? You have to change, and you won't be able to change until you start taking those short pauses in the moment, right? And in the beginning, you will have to be so very kind to yourself, because I remember my beginning days of being aware, and it went like this. For the last 3 days, I've been so pissed off, and I don't understand why, and feel all of these high emotions. And then I could circle back 3 days ago where I didn't catch the thoughts, and I didn't catch the downward spiral. And so if you can learn to do it in the moment, then it doesn't feel like homework. It's like, oh, I recognize I feel really crappy. I feel really nervous. I feel really anxious, and that's okay. I'm going to choose different. I'm going to dance. By the way, if you dislike the whole meditation idea and you're not so familiar with, belly breaths and coming to your senses, dancing is one of the fastest ways out of the head. So you're welcome, because you don't go to Walmart and see everyone partying down the aisle. I mean, you don't even go to Costco or Sam's Club or wherever you're at and just see people dancing, right? It's not like normal. But it's funny because the tools that can save your life are the things that are so simple that we choose not to do them, right? Like, you've told yourself the story, I'll bet, that anxiety is so hard to overcome that it couldn't be as simple as just being happy and dancing and shaking it out and moving energy, right? Like, I imagine if anxiety was any kind of visual, it's this ball of yarn, and all you got to do is just start unwinding it, right? It's like this really tight ball of energy. And so once you can shake it out, and once you can undo this yarn ball, it's crazy, because then it's not all like stuck together, right? So the visual I have of anxiety is just this ball of energy that wants to be moved. And yes, it can happen in your head, but if you can get down into your body and shake it out and wiggle it out and get into your senses, your brain is like, what the hell? But your body's like, oh, like, we're just releasing energy right now, and we're going to move it, because emotions are energy in motion. And if I have an emotion of angst or anxiety, then it makes sense that something is like really contracted. And again, that contraction starts with your thoughts. If I tell myself, again, I'm going to die, my body's contracted, like, oh shit, we're going to die, right? And you start to breathe heavy. But if I tell myself, I'm alive, I am free, I am rich, I am abundant, whatever your affirmations are, cool. Now my body's expanded, right? And it's so simple that it's hard. It's so simple that it's hard because it requires your decision to overcome anxiety and choose no longer to serve the addiction to the pathway of asking the wrong questions. So I hope that served you. I love empowering people to help develop their beliefs and beliefs that serve them. I am a firm believer that you no longer have to be a victim. And when you go from victim to creator or victim to warrior, those are like different energies. And to go from one side to the other isn't hard, but you definitely need tools to understand how to do that. So I empower you to be badass, to take control of your emotional and mental state always. And when you have anxiety, just remind yourself that, oh, I am asking a form of the questions that no longer serve me, so I'm going to ask a different question. How fast can I get back to feeling good? How fast can I get to feeling normal? How fast can I give myself the awareness that I'm in my body and I'm not disconnecting anymore? How fast can I shift my frame of worry and insecurity and fear to I am safe, it is okay, and it's not in my control, and I choose to focus on the things that serve me, the things I can control, right? So I encourage you to do that. I also have a new website out, so it's no longer the old one. I have a new website that I encourage you to go check out. If you can relate to anxiety, or you can relate to feeling disempowered, or you can relate to having garbage beliefs that have literally stopped you from living your best life, then you need to go check that out. So go to beauthenticbelief.com. So beauthenticbelief.com. So I will leave subscription information in the notes below. And if you haven't shared this with someone who needs it, I encourage you to do that. My goal is to help as many human beings on the planet who are in suffering, who need tools, who need to heal, who need to rise, who are ready to empower themselves in really massive ways, in more than one. So I'm excited, and I will talk to you next week. Woo!